Bandwidth for First Updates Now is supported by Loot Crate. Save 10% on a new subscription and score some epic geek and gamer gear by going to trylootcrate.com/First Updates Now. Enter promo code BRIDGE10 for 10% savings. This is First Updates Now Recap, episode 1614, recorded on September 27th, 2016. Recap is brought to you by AndyMark. The season might be over, but now is a great time to stock up for the 2017 season and for off-season events. Head on over to AndyMark.com for great products and deals.
One up in their shooting position. Them and Citrus knocked each other's ball. Oh! It doesn't matter though. Citrus will go get the rebound. Real-time scoring shows a 50-point differential, but with these two alliances, anything can happen. We're down to 30 seconds remaining in the match.
Well, hello everybody. It's time for Recap, where we're here to discuss the latest on what's going on in First Robotics. I'm Tyler Olds.
I'm Justin Montoys.
And I'm Mike Stark.
And we have an action-packed show for you here today, and a lot to catch up on what's been going around in the FRC community. Mike, why don't you give us the rundown?
So we have an awesome show for you guys today on Recap. We'll review and give our takes on the 2017 trailer for the FRC, the 2017 game, first Steamworks. We'll also take your calls. We'll review what went on last Thursday during event registration. We'll debate the Stop Build Day proposal and update you on what's going on with the first scholarships and alumni relations.
There's a lot of stuff there, so so we'll definitely need some help, and that's why we have some awesome guests this evening. So starting out from First Headquarters, I'd like to welcome someone who has been at First HQ for 5 years, is the Alumni Relations Manager, and who you can always think when you hear the words apply, apply, apply. It's Michelle Long. Welcome to the show, Michelle.
Hey, thanks guys. How you doing?
Very well. Thanks for being on.
Yeah,
and
thanks for having me.
And welcome back to the show. Our good friend Jim Zondag. I like this. This is very like Game of Thrones-esque introduction. Ready? Jim is the drive coach for 33 The Killer Bees, host on the RoboZone, father of districts, and publisher of the Stop Build Day paper, of which we will be discussing this evening. Welcome back, Jim.
Thanks, guys. Glad to be here.
Well, with so much going on in the FRC community right now, we're delighted to have both of you on. And Michelle, I do want to start with you because I know you got to take off in a little bit. So going into the alumni and scholarships thing, and as an alumni who didn't take advantage of the now over $30 million in first scholarships, I feel this is something that we really need to drive home with both the students and the mentors. And I think we all have the, apply part in our heads for scholarships. But what advice would you give the students when it comes to getting their fair slice of that immense money pile?
Yeah, that's a great question, Tyler. So, the most important thing is really apply. But that really applies to kind of people in their senior year of high school. So really, the First Scholarship Program is a partnership between First and colleges and universities primarily who are making available scholarship funds to First participants and alumni. So most of those you're able to apply for when you're a senior in high school. But we want to make sure that First participants are aware of the program well before that so that you know what opportunities are there, so that you know what colleges and universities are making available, as well as, kind of what other scholarships are available within the program. So while applying is important, kind of knowing is just as important there. It's just not as catchy.
It's actually not bad.
It's not bad, but it's a really great point. You know what I mean? Like it's before it's too late. It's really good to know about it. So
right.
Your official title, I guess, at first is Alumni Relations Manager. So kind of just to clarify, like who is considered an alumni of First?
That's a great question. So anyone who has graduated from a high school level First program is considered a First alum. So that's really anybody who's graduated from a First Tech Challenge team at the high school level or a First Robotics competition team. That's not to discount folks who haven't graduated through the system. That's really just to kind of classify alum like you see at colleges and universities or high schools.
Cool. So I guess then what's the purpose of just targeting the graduates and not all adults? I mean, for example, Jim, who's on the show with us tonight, might be just a bit too old to even qualify, I guess.
Oh, poor Jim. Yeah, that's a really great question. So, it really is hearkening back to the First mission. So the mission of First is to inspire young adults to pursue science and technology, engineering and math leadership opportunities. And we really want to make sure that our alumni opportunities continue to, kind of move toward that mission. So it's not to discount people like Jim, but really to kind of continue to hone in on people like yourselves who've been through the programs.
Awesome.
Gotcha. Very cool. So another really exciting thing is First is going to be relaunching their alumni page very soon.
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about, what changes we can expect and how we can, how this page will benefit alumni?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you have had an opportunity to check out the alumni page at firstinspires.org/alumni, it's not the prettiest page on the website, but we are looking to, kind of redo it so that it's much easier to use and has kind of any information that a first alum will need in one place. So it will ultimately mirror really similarly the first scholarship program page. So you'll have some basic information on the top, including some alumni spotlights and information on what our alum are doing and how alum can stay involved. And then the bottom half of the page, we're going to redo our internship opportunities there. So on the current page, it's just kind of an ugly list of stuff that our partners have available. In the future, it will be sortable, filterable, searchable, so that folks can find internship and then ultimately job opportunities much more easily.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it seems like, kind of touched on my next question there, but, working to grow that kind of internship and job opportunities with first supporter companies, just making that information a little bit easier to find and available for alumni.
Exactly. And, having it more easily accessible and then having more information there. So we're working with many more of our supporters and partners and sponsors to make sure that people who want to hire a first alum have the ability to post that information and get it easily in front of first alumni.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Great. Well, Michelle, thanks for taking the time to come by on the
thanks
show.
for having me.
Yeah, talk about scholarships, alumni relations. So before you go, do you mind giving us kind of your thoughts on the trailer for First Steamworks?
I am so pumped. I literally get goosebumps. I watched it again just before the show started tonight. I am so excited for 2017. I think it's going to be an amazing year. 2016 was awesome, and I think 2017 is going to be even better.
So we're pretty excited too, especially for myself, more of a technology and education background. I really like to see all the STEAM stuff was really right up my alley, so it was really cool. But a slightly different topic. So I know that really this isn't your area in first necessarily, but when we kind of had the great FRC crash of 2016 for event registration, do you think, can you shed any more light on what happened or kind of how that process is moving forward?
Yeah, I think the best answer I can give is that I don't know any more than the rest of the community does. And I think that that's kind of a great answer that I'm able to honestly give in that, I know Frank has really been clear that he's trying to be transparent in what happened. And from my perspective, I can say exactly, I don't know anything more than anybody else in the community does. And I think that it's really important for kind of people to know that there's not, kind of a secret curtain or secrets here. We really want to make sure that the community knows what's going on. And as soon as I know, you'll know.
Absolutely.
Very cool. So thanks again for coming on the show, Michelle. We know this is a busy time for you guys at first. So where can people reach out and find out more about you, or if they have questions about scholarships or alumni relations?
Yeah, so really easy to get in touch with me. You can send an email to scholarships@firstinspires.org or alumni@firstinspires.org. And you can find information on the scholarship program at firstinspires.org/scholarships and alumni opportunities at firstinspires.org/alumni.
So I'm not going to ask, but I just wonder how many emails a day she must get.
So many.
Crazy.
Yeah, how many? Yeah, I was like, how many?
We're talking millions of dollars, so people are interested.
But you know what? If you send me an email, you'll get a response, and it will be from me, a human being, so cool. Not a robot. Right. I look forward to hearing from everybody.
Fantastic.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Michelle, for taking the time to share your thoughts with the FRC community, and we look forward to all the awesome things first we bring in regards to alumni and scholarships in the near future.
Awesome. Thanks so much, guys. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Awesome, Michelle. Thanks.
Bye.
Good night.
So a quick show note to everybody, especially watching live. We do know there's a little bit of video hiccup issues, and the reason for that is, unfortunately, our producer's out tonight, so I get to pull double duty on things, so it will be an interesting experience with everybody. So we'll try to reset what appears to be my bulbous head right now coming into frame. But if you want to go ahead, do you mind going on with the next segment, either Mike or Justin? I'd appreciate it.
Sure. You got it.
Yeah, sure. All right. So let's get into some recaps from this past week, starting with obviously the unfortunate registration process that happened last Thursday. I was, I'm one of the team leaders for our team, so I was right there, at the forefront when this happened. So I know we don't need to spend a lot of time on this, Jim, but I know that it blocked out an hour of time last Thursday. Now we're going to have to do it all over again. So as far as like server loads, don't really necessarily have a a great understanding of how that works, but how is it that first site cannot seem to handle 3,000 to 4,000 people on it at once?
That's a great question. I don't know if Jim has anything to add, but I don't. You just hope and expect that they would be expecting this, right?
Yeah.
So like that they would have the infrastructure in place. And like you said, I have no idea. I have not the clue like what goes into servers and having that up to spec and stuff. And what honestly, I'm sorry, but what did Frank say in his email more specifically? Did he give so obviously Michelle doesn't know, so they just said that they had like an error and that they're sorry? Is that pretty much what it
Seemed to be?
Pretty much.
Yeah, Jim, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much. They basically apologized for the problem. They didn't really allude to any of the specifics of the problem. Just looking at it, like we don't have obviously visibility into the technical side. It seemed like it might have been more of a coding problem than a loading problem, just based on the nature of it and what was happening. So, but it would seem like we've had these type of crashes before in the past. The recent years have been pretty good. But some of us have been around for a while remember that this used to happen kind of routinely every year. And what would happen is their servers would load, they would start bogging down, eventually it would crash, but they would essentially wait out the peak, and the population would gradually work their way, sort of through the pile, and then everything would go back to normal.
At least we used to be able to hit refresh a
like
bazillion times, though. Couldn't even do that this year.
Yeah. So, I mean, I have no doubt that they have the right people on it. They delayed the introduction of registration, I think, to make sure that they get it right the second time and don't expose anybody to further frustration. So that is the right thing to do.
I think you're right. I think it sucks that it happened. I don't think it should have happened, but as once again, good guy Frank comes through and handles it the right way after the fact. So I think that's great. So
I'm kind of wondering how much longer we're going to kind of stick with a system like this. I know that from having registered many FL teams in the past, FL, you just kind of give them a top 5 of the events you'd like to go to, and they fill the events based on that. So they seem like, it would seem like a pretty solid way to do this. Maybe there's a different reason why that wouldn't work, but for us, we would put Finger Lakes, Buckeye, Pittsburgh, and just, give it to first and let them give people their first choice, second choice, third choice.
I guess so. I guess you still have time to make travel plans, but with FLL, they're all within driving distance for a day, right? It's not like a weekend long buses, hotels.
Somebody proposed the idea of essentially having, depending what week you want to register first, that you would actually just have certain slotted times for registration even. And to me, that seems like a good temporary solution. But realistically, like I said, with having 3,000 people, it's not really too much to really warrant not doing something.
I really don't think it's a loading problem. They should be able to handle 3,000 simultaneous, and I don't know that all 3,000 teams were simultaneously trying to log in, but
I mean, think about what happens on kickoff. How many people are pinging their servers that time.
And also, Frank mentioned in his email that actually didn't crash at the time. That's why I think why Jim was alluding to. It wasn't necessarily a load issue. It said it actually crashed a few minutes prior to when the release was. The time was supposed to click over. So I don't know.
Cool. All right, so we'll move on to, we're going to talk about the teaser next. I mean, this is huge news. So with around 100,000 views on Facebook and 40,000 views on YouTube, the teaser for First Steamworks was released last Tuesday. Looking at the numbers alone, you have to acknowledge First and generating excitement about the upcoming game. We also got the first DLC kit containing some media goodies. Jim, what did you think of the trailer and the DLC kit, and can you speculate on the game for 2017?
I've learned over the years maybe not to speculate on the game. There were some I guess teasing words in there, about taking flight and things like that led to a lot of speculation on the web. I think it's a good look. First has done a lot to work on imagery and things like that. So I like the fact that they're taking the lengths to brand their game. One comment I do want to make is I feel like they've gone so far that the first brand itself is a little bit lost in some of this, like in the poster behind Tyler right now. There's a little First logo in the upper corner, but even in the game logo itself, like the first brand and colors are a little bit muted in there. Which is something my marketing people would never approve of. but I think that First has done something pretty cool. That they moved the teaser earlier in the year, and I think the hype kind of shows. So hopefully we have time for some build up. Maybe there'll be subsequent follow-ons coming up.
Yeah, and I've really priorly evolved on the whole thing. Like when they released the teaser last year, and it was like we knew the theme was compared to prior year's games, really over the top, and I was kind of, I don't want to say like grumpy old man about it, but I was like, this is just kind of silly. But now I'm like, this is the new reality. We just have to embrace it, and it is kind of. It's a interesting way to build some excitement for the season, and I'm trying to stay positive, even though the theme is very, it's very dated. Over the top. Yeah, right, and dated.
Well,
but as far as go ahead.
I was going to say one of the things that I think overall that bugged me the most about the trailer, like the theming thing, yeah, it kind of gets me a little bit, but as I've told people, it's really, I mean, to a certain extent, it's not really what I think or really any of us think. It's what the students get out of it. And I have some students that just think it's the coolest thing ever. So, but for me, the one thing that, man, I just could not stand in the trailer is all I could hear was the exact same words as last year's teaser, because it was done the exact same tone with the exact same voice. And all I kept hearing was "Build your champion" the whole time. And it would be nice to have a little bit of a change up. Like, I mean, it could be the same person. I understand that they're most likely Disney is donating that towards First, and that's awesome. But maybe a little bit of change in the script or tone there would be appreciated.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I'm kind of with Jim. Like for the last several years, I really don't care much about the teasers. Like, it comes out, people have their philosophy and their theories and their whatever, and we're all wrong most of the time. We do get things that come up. It's just not. I don't go on Chief Delphi often anyways, but I don't. I've been on Chief Delphi probably 3 times since it's been released. It's just not. Honestly, it's not worth my time to go read 3,000 posts of what people think this game is, and did you notice this, and did you notice that? And that's just my personal opinion. I think it does create hype. I think it's great. And I didn't, I guess, really think about that. This has come out 2 months prior to when we were in high school. We'd get a game over Christmas.
You get a game in over Christmas
somewhere in there. Yeah. So I mean, this has come out way early. The things that I really I guess, took away from it is the play on words, maybe that in Steamworks itself, where they're adding the A in STEM to to include the arts, and then obviously the big word that you get out of it is teamwork. So I think I think the co-op will be a big thing again this year, and that's really all I've taken out of it, and that's as far as I'm going, I think.
This is where Mike and I differ a little bit. Not only do I visit Chief Delphi multiple times a day,
yes, you are.
but I really do enjoy the breakdown and people getting into, and maybe just from old game hens, people used to, really look at the data that was holding the video, and they try to find stuff.
If you want to pull out 10 top posts, I would look at it, or somebody wants to create the Chief Delphi
So top 10. I'm gonna give you
top 25 of Chief Delphi.
I'm gonna give you the game. I don't know if you're ready for it. I know what the game is. Ready?
It's the hockey pucks.
Yes.
So you think that's the goal?
So I think I think
Football.
the game. No, I think no. I think the game pieces are going to be called coal.
Yeah.
I think we need to shovel the coal into hoppers.
Yeah.
I think the coal is going to be little hockey pucks that we're going to have to shovel up.
My other question, I guess I know it's Steam, and Steam is a great resource, obviously, but it's still in this day and age of renewable energy, to go make a big deal about coal again kind of is also I don't know about
the big thing that I cannot wrap my head around is the flight thing.
Yeah.
We were talking about, maybe it's climbing again. In no way, shape, or form can you tell me that climbing is quote flight. That's not the same thing. Driving up a ramp is not flight.
Yeah.
So obviously I think the main thing everyone took away is is it drones? Is it drones? I can't see it ever being drones. I think they're too expensive.
What about you, Jim? Are we going to ever see flying objects in First this year or in the near future?
I personally don't think so, but again, I would never be surprised by something that First chooses to do. Again, probably my main concern on all of this is, I think a lot of us agreed in 2015 that they maybe went a little too far with the theme, and in some ways ended up with a game that not everybody was particularly enamored with. Last year, again, they sort of recovered from that and made a good game. That was very much loved by almost everybody in the FRC. I'm hoping that they understand the rules of making a good arena sport that is watchable and don't compromise it for the sake of the theme. That's my principal concern in all of these things.
Gotcha.
That we don't repeat some of those mistakes.
And it was just me, or they couldn't even get like the flag things to go up right half the
I know.
time. How can we expect
See-
something to fly like?
See, but now that you mention that, I do think that the flight thing, that's what I think it's going to be like a field element. Like if you put
do
enough
this,
coal in the hopper,
or something
right?
flies
Some
up.
blimp will like raise.
Some blimp.
I don't think there's a good chance it's blimp,
Some blimp will raise.
but I don't think it's going to be anything teams have to build. You know, we were
No.
talking a lot about drone mini bots. It's too expensive. You know, teams would just
Too
spend
dangerous,
a
honestly.
Oh,
to
mini
ridiculous
bots.
amount of money.
Mini bots would be cool.
But like first piloted a college program and they had drones in it. Like I remember walking through
Yeah,
championship and
card,
seeing
I think
the-
it was called.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
In
big
2009,
netted-
I think. Yep.
Yeah, they had
Yeah,
a
I
big
remember
netted
seeing
field.
it in 2011 championships. I think they had
Yeah.
it
Yep.
actually on display at champs.
So like I think it's not totally out of the realm of possibility as far as keeping it safe. I don't think anybody lost an eye at champs in 2011, but you know, like Jim said, I'll never be surprised with something that first decides to do.
Lost a lot of FTC motors in 2011 though, so death and many bots.
Same.
We really want to keep to a program where I only have to build one robot though on the field, right?
Yeah.
Build many bots were as much
Nice
work as the
qualifier.
main robot by the end, right?
Yeah,
That's true.
it's all I worked on that year.
Yep.
All right, anything else on the teaser, or can we move on?
One thing I'd like to say is, I mean, just asking you guys, I like the Steamworks theme, but do you think the imagery that they've put out would compel non-participants to even see that this is a robot competition? It looks kind of, like a bit like a medieval factory, and not necessarily like a teaser for a robotics tournament.
Agreed. And I think they did that a little bit better last year when they kind of, the robot was, I think, a little more central in the animation itself. And my good friend Colin, who teaches in a charter school in the inner city, this animation is just not something that would get his students excited to do robotics. I think this teaser is more like kind of preaching to the choir a little bit. Like this is going to get people who are already excited about first. I don't think it's bringing in any new people.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I mean, and in the trailer that we were just showing, you see the robot a couple times, but in general, you don't really, it's not really prominent or anything. I agree. Somebody just coming into this would probably really have no clue what this is. So,
Well, that's what's so tough is like you can't give away too much either.
Yeah.
So I think that's I think you either got to do it closer and like get it really hyped up, like back to where it was, like Thanksgiving, Christmas, and give away a lot more to like kind of, or this is like kind of what you're stuck with where your hands are tied. You got to try to make it in. I don't know.
Well, and if I can bring up one more thing, then thanks Caltran for bringing it up because I totally forgot this. I don't know, the rest of you download the DLC pack that was included at all?
I did.
I did.
But I mean, what did you
I
guys think
looked
of
at the
it?
media stuff.
I like the
was-
media stuff, but especially the
I mean,
Woody
it was-
Flowers ringtone. Come on.
The Woody Flowers ringtone was definitely something I was missing in my life.
Yeah.
But I thought it was relatively cool. Like I put the same tower, the same image you have on your backdrop is on my.
I'm sorry, we're listening to the thing. Over.
I just heard Woody. Okay, please stop. I can't hear.
I'm sorry.
But I have the Steamworks thing. I looked at all the stuff. It's pretty cool. I think to be able to, a lot of teams made posters for their school and stuff like that. So
Grab your goggles.
it's not bad.
Like,
It's not bad. Plus, the reason why I think it's shoveling coal is because there's a ringtone in there that is just the sound of things being shoveled. So I think that
this
was
just goes back
a
to our
game
point.
night.
Like,
Always
how
wanted that.
is this supposed to grab your goggles? Come do robots.
Put your ideas in motion. Like that's pretty cool. I like that.
Yes, that's better.
Jim, did you get a chance to look at the DLC pack?
Yeah, I did. Again, I think it's good that First is attempting to produce, a bunch of imagery components very early in the season, that teams can use to build their own hype however they want. They can put the logo. They've got the poster backdrop that you've got. I'm not sure how compelling Woody Flowers ringtones are to people who don't know Woody Flowers, but I think it's pretty cool that they're trying to appeal to a lot of the people in the youth demographic that like eat this type of stuff up. So it's a great attempt, great effort.
Great attempt. Great effort. Good effort.
All right, well, let's move on here. We're going to get going with our recap here. There's been a lot of off-season events the past couple months, and we like to usually cover them all, but we understand that there's a lot going on for today's show, and we definitely want to get to those. So let's cover the big event that happened this past weekend in California. Justin, what can you tell us about the best of the West in Chezy Champs?
All right, so this past weekend was the third running of the toughest off-season event on the West Coast, Chezy Champs, which featured 41 teams from Washington, Oregon, Texas, and of course, many teams from California. Each of those teams played 10 qualification matches over 2 days, and after lots of excitement and heartbreak, Team 971, Spartan Robotics, took the top spot with a record of 8-2 and 34 ranking points, edging out the second-ranked team, 1678 Citrus Circuits, by just 1 ranking point. Those two teams would pair up, however, in the elimination rounds, with 971 taking 1678 first overall. Third-ranked 254 picked up 973 the Greybots to form the number 2 ranked alliance. The number 1 alliance picked up 604 and 2135 to round out their alliance, and the combination of 4 found some instant chemistry, which is not surprising after 971 and 1678 teamed up earlier in the year to win at Sacramento. They were able to at least easily advance to the finals from their side of the bracket. On the other side, 254, 973, and their alliance partners 5924 and 696 were able to defeat the number 7 alliance, but then they ran into some trouble in the semifinals. And with 254 sitting out the deciding third semifinal match, the number 3 alliance of 4488, 3250, 1868, and 2073 were able to take the win. So this set up an exciting 1 versus 3 finals, but in the end, both alliances were very consistent with what they were able to put up, with the number 1 alliance being around 35 points higher in both matches to take the Chezy Champs Championship. So congrats to them, as well as the Chezy Poofs, for putting on a great event. I've heard lots of comments, I've read lots of comments and compliments about how awesome and fun and exciting the atmosphere was. So 254 is really doing a great thing. Being able to put a fun and serious off-season event together. So it was certainly another great year for Chezy Champs.
Awesome, man. Thanks. I mean, you hear like you said, you hear nothing but good things coming from that event and the people that go and the teams that go. So props to them for another successful year and a great production value as well. So
yeah,
great.
I was going to say one thing that I think a lot of people will be like, oh, they won't talk about that. I thought GameSense did a great job doing the live event production. So kudos to them for doing an awesome job in making a really good spectacle for us to watch as well. Just out of curiosity, for Chezy Champs, 254 got eliminated in the semis, which I think would probably surprise a lot of people. They were ranked 3rd. The semis were like the part I missed. So does anybody know what happened in regards to that? Like what made them falter?
I tried doing some research. They were on the batter.
I think it was a red card if I remember, but
really,
I don't know. I'm sure somebody in the chat can correct me. I'm sure.
At the end of their second semifinal match, they were on the batter, so they didn't break in semifinal match 2, but they were not on the field for match 3. So I'm not sure what happened.
Oh, okay, yeah. I think that makes more sense then. Huh. Interesting. Jim, did you get a chance to watch it all?
I watched the finals. I did not see the semifinals.
So, yeah. Oh, yeah. It looks like it just going on the TBA. It looks like that 973 was in, and then 254 must have gone out because then 696 is actually replaced them. So yeah, they must have broke down or something on there.
There you go. Gear exploded in their gearbox.
Ooh,
oh, man.
Teeth everywhere.
No future in that.
Same thing happened to Hot in the semifinals at Kettering Kickoff the week before.
Same thing happened to Bedford Express at the Pittsburgh finals.
Is that a personal thing there, Justin?
A little bit. Great
right.
Team. Love them.
Yeah.
Drive thing exploded.
Yeah, and I think one of the coolest things this year, too, I know we didn't really get a chance to go through all the off-season events, but there are a lot of off-season events going on, and I just love that there's more and more and more, and I know a couple of them are talking about doing video replay as well, too, and to me, the off-season events is where we get the pioneer things, and that From the video production that we saw at Chezy Champs to I know my buddy Ryan Donio, I think he has an event coming up in St. Louis. They're going to be doing video replay. I really like to see off-season events raise the bar and push the envelope a bit more to just get more cool things that could be potential for first. And why not be the guinea pig in an off-season event?
Yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
absolutely.
So let's take a break to thank our sponsor for today's show. That's going to be Annie Mark. And first off, if you're watching on Tuesday, make sure you stop by their Tuesday deals page to check out the amazing deals they have going on for that. The 2016 FTC game, Velocity Vortex, is here. And don't forget that Annie Mark is your premier resource for FTC parts and field elements. From robot parts like the Dura Omni wheel to the Never Rest motors and gearboxes, you can also get full field perimeter and components at andymark.com. And if you're solely an FRC, go ahead and check out the newly redesigned MK Mecanum wheels. MK from Mark Coors and the amazing time that he has spent at Annie Mark, retiring just a little bit ago. So Mark, hope you're enjoying that retirement. These wheels have hugely improved capacity, lower cost, and better interfacing ability. And as proved by Einstein teams, Mecanum wheels are not just for moving your robot forward, but are extremely versatile for acquisition and other on-field functions. So go ahead to anniemark.com, check out their inventory, and a huge thank you to Annie Mark for their continued support of First Updates Now. Thanks, Annie Mark.
Absolutely, thank you.
Tyler, did you have a chance to take a look at the FTC game animation at all?
Yeah, I did see the animation. I'm going to be honest with you, I don't remember a lot of it.
It seems like a pretty solid game. Our school hosted the FTC kickoff for our area, so it seems like a pretty fun game. I think anytime you're throwing balls through hoops and bouncing very, very large balls especially in comparison to the size of the robots, seems like a pretty cool game. The only thing I'm never really a fan of is the 30-second autonomous. It's just too long. Every FTC event I've been to,
Vex is the same way, I think, for their college too, and I never got that.
Yeah, it's just every FTC tournament I've ever been to, they skip the autonomous mode 90% of the time.
Really?
Yeah, they just go right to tell you.
Interesting.
But the game does look pretty good, pretty cool overall. So if you haven't seen it, you should definitely check it out.
Yeah,
Cool.
I'm showing the animation on the screen, and if I remember correctly, I like that the balls just kind of fall straight through, so you can just pick them up and keep scoring again and again, and I like that a lot. That's cool.
Sweet. Oh, yeah, you're showing it right there. Wow, dude. Nice pull-up. Cool. So our main story of the night, we've already had a couple great discussions already.
This is going to be a good one, though.
Yeah, oh, yeah. It's going to focus on what could be a bigger game changer than first having 2 championships. First put out an interesting survey asking for FRC members' opinions about the value of still having a stop build day. Jim had impeccable timing to already be working on an essay and paper that he published as a white paper on Chief Delphi titled Stop the Stop Build. What inspired you, Jim, to publish this, and can you provide us an overview of what this is all about?
Yeah, I can. Again, I want to thank Frank for actually bringing this topic up and bringing it to public. I think it's something that's been out there for a long time. Probably the main thing was the catalyst was actually John Bryant, believe it or not. So John Bryant's relatively new to the FIRST organization. I met him for the first time at Vex Worlds the week before championship. He came out to sleuth Vex Worlds, see what was going on with Vex, which was the first time I think we ever had an official from the FIRST community actually attend the premier Vex event. So I thought that was great. And we talked to John a lot about the differences and similarities between FIRST and Vex. And with like unrestricted build access being one of the hallmarks of Vex, where you sort of get a much more iterative design process in Vex than you see in FIRST. I saw John again at the IRI, and at the IRI I said, you know what, I'm going to write up my thoughts and send it to you this summer. So that was in the middle of July. I worked on it a bit in August, got distracted by real life, and then I had originally had a internal due date of having something published by the 1st of September. I didn't do that, and then a couple days later the survey came out, so I sat down and just finished it. So saying what better time than after they've launched a survey. So I'm really just trying to illustrate a few points about what I think the whole build restriction, some of the penalties, which may or may not be totally visible to everybody, that we've seen for years in studying FIRST statistics and growth of FIRST and through all the district management that we do.
Jim, I thought you actually kind of put this together. Like when it came out, I'm like, man, did he just take a vacation day and just write all this in one day or not? That was my first thought when this came out. I'm like, man, what does that guy actually do at work?
That was kind of a late night writing binge. Believe it or not, like the opening thing, I was trying to finish it during the Olympics and I didn't quite get done. And then I sort of rewrote some of it and published it the following week. But yeah, I mean, I think, like, my personal opinion on the whole matter is this: is I've been involved in machine sports my whole life. You know, I grew up racing bicycles, and we used to, race three-wheelers and, do a lot of things with machines, with snowmobiles and dirt bikes and even cars and all kinds of stuff. FIRST is the only sport I've ever been involved in or even am aware of where they try to take the machine away from you. And FIRST, there's some good reasons for that, but that they claim. But I think the negatives, in my opinion, vastly outweigh the positives. But because they've done it for so long, I think it's become institutionalized in the FIRST culture, and there's a lot of fear about removing this constraint.
So, I really enjoyed reading it, and I was always kind of, I don't want to say on the fence. I was definitely more towards stop build, but your paper really laid out a couple additional points that I hadn't really thought of, and one of them talks about the value of extra play for teams. So, how does kind of the value of extra play relate to implementing kind of a stop build?
Well, I can tell you a couple things. Like from the FIRST in Michigan board, we totally agree, actually, believe it or not, with the position of FIRST. FIRST comes right out and says, we're really not in the robot competition business. We're in the inspiration business. We completely agree. The purpose of the whole organization is try to inspire people to pursue these careers, inspire people to greatness. I think where we differ is, we believe very strongly that you can't inspire people that you cannot reach. So we think that we have to expand the reach of FIRST in order to inspire more people. And part of expanding the reach is really with media. And if you look at something like BattleBots, right? BattleBots is a small league. There's only a couple hundred groups that do BattleBots in the world. We have 10 times as many, 50 times as many in FRC as we have in BattleBots. However, BattleBots can immediately come from out of nowhere, get a contract with ABC, and reach 4 million people a week. We, in 25 years, have never been able to do this in FRC. And part of the reason, and that's part of what motivates me and our organization is, how do we reach more people? So we have kind of the 4 R's. We believe that FIRST has growth as a primary metric. We agree. In order to recruit, you need to reach. You have to reach more people. And the second one is, in order to retain people, to maintain that growth and have continuity, you have to have return. You have to have return on investment. And that's really what the extra plays are all about, is return on investment. Teams who only play once a year have a much more shorter team lifespan than teams who play more frequently. This is very well evidenced in the data. So it's one of the first things that we did in FIRST in Michigan when we started districts. Was one of the first principles was, how do we increase return on investment? How do we get teams more playing time per event? How do we get teams more playing time per year? Because we're convinced from everything that is one of the principal things that makes teams stay in the league.
So, Jim, I want to bring up an objection that we did have mailed in, and I know that there was also that counterpoint paper, so I want to bring up a couple things for that too, but the one I had emailed in wasn't very nice, so I kind of made it a little bit more friendly for the show. But can you explain why the no-bag proposal, as they call it, wouldn't create a situation where an overzealous mentor would lead a team to totally rebuild their FRC robot after seeing what other successful teams did?
I actually think that it wouldn't stop that, and the painful truth is that happens already. It absolutely does. So people who fear that happening, what's really happening now is only the teams with tons of resources can even consider that. So the policies today really are in favor of the rich teams. Now, it's not necessarily about money. It's about teams with a lot of resources who have builders with know-how. I mean, I think Alan Gregory came right out on Cheap Delphi and said, "Oh yeah, we've completely replaced our entire robot throughout the season by doing a series of 40-pound incremental upgrades through the season. By the end of the season, there's no part of it that was the same as the beginning." This happens already. So there is nothing there. We see it in VEX, right? I don't fear this at all. In VEX, what it is they essentially crowdsource the ultimate robot. The teams in VEX sometimes, by the time they get to the championship, you're on 5th or 6th generation products by the time they get to the end. The FRC season will be shorter, it'll remain shorter, but if teams want to put in the work to be better, I'm not sure there's any reason to tell them to stop. So I honestly am proposing there's a lot of fear about changing the level of access to the robots. I actually think you'll get a tremendous benefit from a small change by adding weekly access, because it planerizes everything, that no matter how many events you can afford to go to, then everybody will have equal access. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just saying, to kind of relate it back to what you had said earlier, that FIRST is in the inspiring business. Like, what could be more inspiring about students who want their robot to get better but can't do anything about it, but can't get to the robot?
Yeah, honestly,
once or twice, and then they can't get to it. So that's another point. That's a side point, and I think that plays right into what you're talking about here.
And I have it, honestly, like we have it with all new teams. The year that you're most likely to lose teams is in their first year, right? If you look at some of those attrition studies, you lose more teams after the first year than you do in any other year. Why do you lose teams? I mean, we lose teams from the bottom segments of the league. That's predominantly where most of them go. Some of the comments on my paper was, well, correlation doesn't imply causality. You're absolutely right, it does not. But we know this actually from anecdotals, right? We've been running FIRST in Michigan for 9 years now. We try to discuss with every team who decides not to return why they are not returning. In a very high percentages of the time, it is teams who feel like they can't do this, right? They tried to do it, they failed, they don't want to do it anymore. So the process right now, it allows teams to fail too easily, because essentially by disallowing people from working, or actually, believe it or not, having rhetoric that makes them believe that working is bad, right? The first rhetoric actually makes you think, oh, I'm only supposed to work on it for 6 weeks, and then I'm supposed to stop. A lot of teams take that very much to heart and think, well, the robot's not done, so there's nothing we can do. They literally believe this. And we try to coach them out of that. But a lot of teams we lose are teams who they don't really ever get a robot working, and then they decide not to do it anymore because it's too hard.
Jim, if I can just give a counterpoint here, because when you think about the challenge of having at an X amount of time, then you're done. That's always something that Woody has always kind of promoted, though, as a feature of this program, is that, we have
the hardest 6 weeks of your life.
Too little resources with too little time, sort of thing. And I'm not necessarily disagreeing with you, but to kind of bring up a counterpoint on it, I mean, that doesn't have that truncated amount of time. I mean, what if we all went back to only 6 weeks, like it used to be a long time ago, where you put that in a crate, you shipped it, you could not build anything else, you could not bring anything in?
I'll just ask, the disadvantage, to me, the disadvantage is, believe it or not, I like having a full semester sport. Believe it or not, I like daily interface with the students that I'm trying to inspire. It's no different than a football league, right? You play football, you basically play for a semester, and you work right up to the end of the last game, however deep you go in the playoffs. That's how hard you work. That's basically the way that FIRST should be. That's the way that I run my team. If they told us that you're not allowed to build practice robots, I would still do the maximum amount possible within whatever the limits of the rules are to allow me to continue to work with my students through the whole season to the end. I would do that. That's what we like to do. And believe it or not, I love it as a coach and as a leader to have students where I say it all the time is the schedule of my team is not set by me and the adults. It's by the students. Essentially, most days we're throwing them out. Like we tell them eventually, we have to stop now. We have to go home. I actually love the fact that we have students who they literally want to do this more than anything else in life. And they reap huge benefits as a result. And isn't that what the program is truly about?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
So I mean, that kind of plays into the next like kind of counterpoint, I guess, to allowing more time to work on robots is that many mentors already put in like some say like an unhealthy amount of hours into the season. So will eliminating stop build day kind of increase mentor burnout? What do you think?
I actually think, to me, if I evaluate my personal experience and other people that I know, I think the answer is no. Believe it or not, one of the most damaging things about FIRST is it does burn out mentors and it does kill mentors because of the true sense of ultimatum that you have. I mean, I've had this myself. If I have a work project that's going bad, and suddenly my senior director says, you need to go to Mexico, and it happens to be week 6, right? Imagine as a team leader what that would mean to you. Do you tell your boss, I'm not going to do this work-related thing and jeopardize your career? Do you abandon your team and let the whole project fail? What do you do?
That's like that train car thing, who do you kill, right?
Yep. Yeah, so if you have follow-on access, even if it's in a limited capacity, you have the ability to recover. If you don't, you don't. And that can be really bad. I mean, some of these programs, a cheap FIRST program runs in the $10,000 to $15,000 per year range. Some of the bigger teams will spend upwards toward $100,000, right? So while it's not as big as work projects, they're still not to be trivialized, especially if you're raising all that money by selling donuts or something. So that's a lot of work. So the FIRST is a year-round program. It really is, because if you're going to run a world-class team, you're going to spend a lot of the rest of your year raising money, getting sponsors, promoting, doing all the things that you need to do to enable that build period to be a success. And because there's such a profound sense of ultimatum at the end of it, there are adults who simply say, I cannot do this anymore because I just can't tolerate carving out 6 weeks where I do nothing else.
Right. Think of like the Lego League, the VEX, whatever season the team leaders can kind of budget their time, and say like, if we have, X amount of weeks and we don't have to meet maybe as often during the week, if we have more time on the back end. I'm sure like you just already said, your team, the 118s, the 148s, the 54s, they're already maxing out that time anyways. So I think it would help mentor burnout, I think, if having more time, that maybe teams that don't have as many resources can spread out their build season a little bit more and not make it so jam-packed during those 6 weeks.
Yeah, that's kind of what I think would naturally happen. We see this, you can sort of see you can see it happen in VEX and in some of the other leagues too. If you give teams more time, like in VEX, you have a whole year. A lot of teams don't do anything for the first 6 months.
Absolutely,
right?
Yeah.
It's like a term paper. You sort of work on it hard when the deadline comes up. And the whole discussion around, deadlines are important and you must have deadlines. And it's true, but you're always going to have a deadline whenever you have to put the robot on the field to play your first match. Exactly. That's your deadline. That will always exist as long as you're competing, right?
Bingo.
So the amazing thing I think about this topic is, really, I think some of it is a little bit of revisionist history, and to me the most interesting thing about the whole topic is, FIRST originally had one program, and then after 3 or 4 years they instituted this policy, and then they started Lego League and they did not institute this policy, and then they started FTC and they did not institute this policy. So if this policy is so important, why is it only part of FRC? And it was not originally part of FIRST. It was not originally part of FIRST. It was added in 1995, as far as we can tell. I was not in the league then. We joined in 96. It was already there. But in 1995, it was added. The first manual says basically this: timing between regionals, tournaments, and the national championship to provide every team, regardless of events in which they participate, approximately the same number of design and build days. The following shipping regulations and dates will apply. And then they put this in there. But they used to have, after tournaments, all teams competing will have 5 days to make repairs or changes to the machines within all rules outlined, and then they had to ship their robots. So originally there was not a true stop build day, and then later this actually got added later in time, like around, it sort of phased in and out in the 99 through 2002 period, where it finally became a strict stop build, and that was, in all honesty, largely due to shipping logistics with crates.
Yep.
Right. So thinking that this is a fundamental part of what FIRST is and has always been, it really isn't true. True, Woody Flowers' class that first originated from the MIT 2007 class from Woody Flowers. That's where FIRST came from. That was a semester class, and there was a competition at the end, and you had a semester with a deadline. When you put your robot on the field, you were competing with it. That was the original deadline. And it's been changed a bunch first, but I think the main thing with this is first, mentors are very important. I think they're actually the most important thing in FIRST. They're more important than money. They're more important than almost anything else. So there are a lot of mentors who have been vocal where they think if the restrictions are relaxed, it'll be harder on the mentors. I would argue that in many ways, it's probably easier on the mentors.
And I agree.
I think
it's
harder on the mentors that maybe don't put in I know probably you do too, Jim. The amount of time that I already put into mentoring team, as we mentioned before, it's not going to get any worse than what it was before. So the only people I think it could get, quote, worse for would be those who just let it get worse and who decide like, hey, I do want to dump more hours in. Just having that extra time allows you to just reallocate the time you already have over a longer period.
Yeah, and I think, I didn't cover every pro and con that I have in my list, in my paper. I was trying to be somewhat concise and have some factual things. But I actually think probably the number one way that stop build restriction actually hurts us is I think it just destroys teams' ability to self-promote. I really do. And I've always thought this is one of the fundamental barriers for growth for FIRST and even for acquisition of sponsors and mentors. Basically, if you build a cool robot, what is the number one thing you want to do? You want to show it to people. So unfortunately, in the FIRST culture, what you do is you work really, really hard on this thing late at night and on the weekends. And as soon as you're done, you put it in a bag. And then you're not allowed to show it to anybody except at tournaments. And then you put it back in a bag. So I know there are some caveats to do exceptions for promotions and things like that, but the vast majority of teams do not do that. So it is very hard to self-promote, to just take the robot to your school the weekend before your tournament and say, we're going to drive this thing around at a pet rally and get a whole bunch of people to try to come out to our regional. You can't do that. We're going to take it
they
and
always
show
say
the
about sponsors as well, right? You can't show any of these
we're going to
sponsors
take
that
it
give
to
you
our
thousands
sponsors.
and thousands, yeah.
So I think the opportunity of cost of that is gigantic, and it's impossible to quantify, but I think it's huge.
Right. And another thing that I've been thinking about more, especially when we talk about increasing mentor burnout, and like Mike alluded to, if you want to, like as far as increasing mentor burnout, if you want to keep everything for your team and your schedule exactly the way it is right now, you're more than welcome to do that, right? You don't have to change anything. It would be really nice to be able to take a night off, like you were saying, Jim, without feeling like you're missing a huge opportunity to continue. But another big thing for me, if we just eliminated stop build completely and the actual deadline was your first match, not having to build a practice spot would decrease teams' need to fundraise so much money. Our practice spot increases the money we have to spend tremendously, and it increases the amount of work we have to put in just to essentially circumvent the rule in giving ourselves kind of an unlimited build season. And I think eliminating stop build would help teams that can't build a practice spot, or that either they don't have the resources or the money or whatever. It would put everyone back on a little more even playing field, because our practice spot and the practice spots of other teams are a huge advantage that most teams just don't have.
Yeah. most teams will not be able to A, afford a practice robot, and B, have a sort of a design and build process that allows them to build two identical machines. Most teams do not have that, will probably not ever have that. But if you can have one machine and just work on it and tweak it out, I mean, that's really the thing. A lot of the differences between a good robot that works and one that works great are actually pretty small. It's all the small tweaking stuff that actually takes a lot of your time. It's like why do we have such low, I guess, success rates in autonomous mode when you look at it sort of nationally? It's because that's the last thing you do. After you have a finished robot, then you start developing your autonomous.
Yeah, that's a great point, Jim. Like
Yeah.
how much cooler would autonomous be if teams could just keep always working on it? You know,
Yeah.
they can't because they don't have if practice bot teams have a practice bot, but those that don't obviously don't, and they can't practice that. So
Yeah, believe it or not, on this whole subject, I thought for sure in 2003, after they put autonomous mode into the FRC, I said, okay, now the camel's nose is in the tent. Okay, so now there's going to be a reason why teams need to have a working robot in order to compete in this sport. And still, 12 years later, 14 years later, they still haven't really removed it. I thought for sure the addition of autonomous mode would drive them to give free access to the robots.
some great stuff. So
You got some Iron Chef going on back there, Jim, or what?
Ice cream in the kitchen.
All right.
Kids are serving ice cream.
Yes, they are.
yes, they are.
Go ahead, Mike.
Oh no, I was just saying. So I mean, we kind of hit most of what we wanted to talk about. The one that's kind of a little bit maybe doesn't relate, but still does is so in your paper you discussed that first really isn't media friendly. So what's that like? Kind of maybe what you mean by that for those that don't know what you mean, and then what steps would you take to steer first, kind of in the right direction?
I think, well, part of that is that's not really necessarily a criticism about first. I think we're always going to be shackled with some of that, where we're asking teams to build a machine to play a new sport that they've never seen before every year. Like at least half of them are just not going to be particularly good at it, and that really is it. So, we started working with media people for the last couple of years. We've been doing RoboZone for 2 years now. We actually just got commissioned. We're going to do season 3 on Fox, awesome. So that's great. But some of these media people, I mean, they are just brutally frank about, they use words like boring and horrible, and they use some of this terminology when they start describing this, And so we take some of this to heart, going, some of these people in the popular media, when we show them this in real life, they are not enamored by it at all, and it makes it a tough sell. And like I said in some of my intro remarks is, I firmly believe our ability to inspire is firmly rooted in our ability to impact and reach people. How do we reach more people? If we don't have a sport that people want to watch or can be turned into a sport that people want to watch, we're always going to be limited. What we're trying to really do, in Michigan is we're trying to turn FRC into a varsity sport in its own right. We're trying to entrench it in the academic establishment. We are trying to get it where we got weekly media coverage, in the newspapers, on the news, on the radio, on the television, trying to do all these things. But it's a tough sell. It really is. And my personal opinion is if you relax the build restrictions a little bit, the quality of the robots on the field later in the season would increase substantially and make a much more watchable sport. And I think that really is very important to bring. And let's just be frank, this will bring money to the sport. You have no idea. First, one of the biggest, actually, it's not a problem, but First is basically built as a charity. It is built as a nonprofit. It is built as a charity. So all of the money that is underpinning it, almost without exception, is all coming from, community foundations, charitable outreach arms of various corporations. It's all philanthropic dollars, right? But those are like drops in a bucket compared to advertising dollars. I work for FCA Chrysler. We spend more on a single Jeep commercial for the Super Bowl than we have spent on supporting FIRST for 20 years. I mean, like, so if you can in any way get to where you have something that is media friendly and you can get some advertising dollars under it, it will really make this thing a lot easier to finance for a lot of the teams, right? And for everybody. And I think that while we don't want to compromise our principles chasing after sponsor dollars, we should think about whether we're doing things to inadvertently hurt ourselves in that end. And I think this is one of them. So, anyway.
All right. So we can. I know our next question, Tyler. I know you're on it, but we kind of already went over that, I guess. Unless you want to.
You can just keep moving on, man. I'm just
question?
doing random stuff.
Yep.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's all right.
What's the question?
Oh no, it was kind of about. We kind of jumped it. Went to just kind of eliminating. We've talked about it in a different way. About in your paper, you talk about the 8 hours of every week, during the competition season, which we kind of talked about a little bit, and then we went even further a little bit to just talk about.
I mean, I can address that. So I have it where the whole prospect of ending Stop Build Day, there is a lot of fear around that. Like that, we end up with a limitless arms race of robots, right? Sorry, there's an alarm going off in my house.
Okay, my fire alarm went off last show, so you're all good.
That we get into a limitless arms race of building robots and the build season will be unlimited. In comp season, people will still be working 12 hours a day, and everybody will go crazy. I mean, there is some reality to that fear. So the thing that I would say is this: like the point I'm trying to make is the robots will get better and the teams will have a better experience if we relax these constraints. I think if you do it in a measured way first, you'd be able to prove the validity of that claim without making sort of taking on a giant risk. And then if people get into a mode where people genuinely say, you know what, after my robot's done, I could work 8 hours a week, but I don't. Or everyone says, oh man, now we have to work every week and this is terrible. You'd be able to assess the reality of some of these claims on how good or how bad it would actually be without taking a lot of risk and just throwing the whole thing away and then trying to put it back again later, right? So I was proposing sort of cautiously coming at the problem. We have 20 years experience doing it one way, but it's certainly not the only way.
Cool.
Yep.
So I guess lastly, so kind of end all. If you could end Stop Build Day for this coming season, would you do it? And since you claim that FIRST is a year-round sport, and I think we all agree with that, should we change the kickoff date to provide teams more time?
To answer the first question, if it were up to me, yes. I would abolish the whole thing and just give people free access to the robots. If I were frank, so again, my proposal is take an intermediate step, see how impactful it is, get real data on the before and after, and then maybe work your way to that. If it were up to me, yes, I would get rid of it. I've always found it odd. Like I said, I've done machine sports in all kinds of different arenas in almost everything you can think of throughout my life, and this is the only one that has something like this. So I always say either we're smarter than everybody else or we're stupider than everybody else. I'm not sure which, right? But we're definitely different than everybody else. And I don't actually think that doing it this way is actually part of the core principles of FIRST, right? If I really read through their charter about inspiration and everything else, this is just an operational decision. It's not anything that is fundamental, I think, in their ethos. So I would get rid of it. Should we move the start date? No. I think no. Believe it or not, I very much like that FIRST is compartmentalized into a semester. I think it's very good. I would advocate for a whole bunch of changes but the number one thing that I would advocate for is release of information and the creation of standards. What that really means is this, in FIRST, I think one of the biggest problems you have with FRC is it's very hard to embed into curriculum because nobody knows what it is. And nothing is really standardized. FIRST does not commit to producing a lot of the structural information about the league, the nature of the challenge, the nature of the robot rules, or anything until kickoff. So when you get to kickoff, it's like a fire hose. right? You get thousands of pages of documentation. It all arrives on one day, and you have to somehow ingest all this stuff immediately and go immediately into execution, because the best teams in the world are building robots like 2 days in, right? So you don't have time to slow teach classes about any of this subject material. And while we do have some year-over-year continuity of things, I mean, some basics, like you can't even get LabVIEW licenses until kickoff, right? So you can't teach if you're a new team, you can't teach a fall LabVIEW class because you don't have any licenses to do it with. So if all of that stuff, if everything except the details of the game itself were available, like when school started, I think that you would get a lot of different culture, that you'd start getting like fall clubs and even class curriculum built around FIRST and teaching the things that you need to know for FIRST, so that your like sort of winter mode January, February club is building the robot around the subjects that you learned previously. I really think that that's where they should go. Part of that will require, I honestly think, standards. I have it with the field. You know, every sport has a standard field. FIRST, well, they had basically a standard field.
We have a standard field perimeter, not a standard field.
But even the field perimeter, they have never come out and said this field perimeter will not change next year. If Steamworks comes out and it's a giant octagon, I mean, people would be shocked.
I think unofficially, actually, Frank said that it was going to stay with the same approximate size for the next like 2 to 3 years or something like that.
Okay, so again, that's in some dialogue. I don't think that there's a
no. I don't know. You're right. I don't know if it's actually documented.
So the real thing you have, you know, so we do it in FIRST in Michigan. You know, we build custom field perimeters and we own a bunch of them. You know, so we buy 4 of those or so, but pieces of those get obsoleted frequently and things like that. And I like the fact that they can keep their game flexible. But if you think that individual schools would ever commit to building and owning a field like they would with other sports, the risk of obsolescence in this sport is so much greater. It's so much greater than in any other sport. So how can you have a school district or a community center or something commit to facilitizing this in a more permanent way if the whole thing is intended to be like malleable and transient, right? So, you know, but no, I would not change the length of the season. I like the fact that it starts the 1st of January and it must end before the students go into final exams. So the length of it, to me, I would never change.
All right. Well, that's going to be it for today's show. The legend himself, Jim Zondag. Hey, man, thank you so much for coming on the catch up and talk about Stop Build Day with us. You know, I'm sure you have a RoboZone coming up this year. What can we look forward to in 2017 for RoboZone?
Yeah, talking about RoboZone. Yeah, we were recently approved for season 3 of RoboZone. Some of the things we're going to try to do, again, RoboZone, at least for now, it is largely an insider show. We're trying to make a week by week sort of sports desk show about robotics. We are probably going to get some more commentators. I'm not going to drop names until I have better commitment. We are going to do a lot more with social media, meaning we are going to do Facebook videos with outtakes from the show, perhaps do some more in-depth discussion about some of the things that we catch on the show. We're going to do more visits, so we're planning a series of visits to key teams during the build season, and then we're gonna like shoot some feature pieces that we're gonna insert into the shows as we go through the season when those teams are competing. You know, maybe re-interview them to say, you know, you thought this in week 3, now here you are competing. What do you think now? We're gonna do a bunch of that. So we're gonna try to increase the production value of it a little bit. And we got a great producer who's he's really committed to making this happen. They're very committed, that they think that robotics and things like it are sports of the future, and they've committed their network to supporting us.
That's awesome. That's really awesome. You guys are able to get an actual television network behind you, and I know that's one of the things that Vex did a fantastic job this year with, was getting on ESPN2 for their Vex Worlds as well. And I think I don't think it's a golden ticket necessarily, but you know, for those of us who are around a long time, we know that FIRST used to be on ESPN, and I think we need to find a way to get back more into that social presence. And you talked about with, you know, FIRST not having the best media aspect for things, and it's not very presentable always that way. And we need to find different ways to get more inclusive with that. And one of the ways actually that First, I think, did a really good job last year was partnering with Twitch to do a live stream as well too, and engage more of a engaged community, right? And actually show that. And yeah, we need to find different ways with higher production value. And the one thing I will still always, man, it's so unfortunate that Frank has straight out said making video production standards in regards to like actually broadcasting a live stream is not on their priority list. And I think that's one of the biggest crimes in First is that we need to find a way to be able to just get a blanket coverage of all the events that we're doing and just make it accessible for people to actually watch.
Well, I'm surprised how many views we get on some of these things. So some of the things, Clint Bollinger from the Engine Nerds, he got us on this kick starting all the way back in 2010, where we now have it in our First in Michigan standards, where we basically stream and record and archive every single match that's played in our state. And I never cease to be amazed how many people actually watch that from the First community.
I mean, we use it all the time for our show. Like, we obviously can't watch everything. We know it's instantly there. We can watch any match from anything that happened in First in Michigan, and have some good data and stuff about it. It's amazing. It's great.
And it, with us, we're doing a single sort of fisheye cam, bird's eye view of the field. It's mainly aimed at scouts and insider fans. For it, but I'm surprised how many parents will tune in, and people will be people's parents will be texting us because they're watching
alumni who are out of state at a different school. Yeah, I mean,
I'm amazed how many people, and it the true price of doing that is not very much. Well, it's not none. So again, we wanted a standard. So we, after a couple of years, sort of made a standard mixing deck, and we make. But as part of the AV production for the event, you have a GoPro, a pole, and a man assignment to make sure you enumerate all the match titles properly. So it's really not very much work, and it's a tiny little bit of extra setup for the AV crew, and I think it adds a tremendous value to everything that we do. And then we have a permanent archive of everything that happened that we produced. I think it's great.
Awesome. Well, Jim, we look forward to more of the RoboZone, and of course 33 with hopefully another fantastic season coming up, and just the amazing train that team just keeps on rolling. And I know you're a huge part in that, and First in Michigan, and just improving First in general. So thank you for your contributions and making First great again, and just making First just an awesome place to be. So thanks, Frank, Jim. You should.
No problem.
You're like the new.
So great.
Yeah, you're like the new Frank, kind of. Also, big thanks to Michelle Long as well too for joining us today. And chat world, all we ask that if you enjoyed the show, easiest way to get back to us is to tell a friend, post on your favorite social media or forum site promoting the show, and don't forget you can subscribe to us through Twitch, YouTube, iTunes, RSS, or really pretty much any way you want to get a hold of us. We're out there at First Updates Now. We do have our new website, firstupdatesnow.com. And if you'd like to leave us feedback, email feedback@firstupdatesnow.com. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. A huge thanks to our mods and Twitch as well. We hope you enjoyed the show, and if you're watching live, stick around for our post-show for a few minutes. Other than that, we'll see you next time. Good night on First Updates Now.
Good night, guys.
Good night.